franchise, this is a really, really exciting day. You've probably seen we've signed Rick Carlisle to be our head coach. This search was definitely different than last year. Last year, we interviewed about 15 plus, and over the course of 5 or 6 weeks, we really narrowed it down. And so we did something a little bit different this year. We identified some characteristics that we felt like were really important for this team, and specifically for this timeline for this team, because we're in a win now. We're trying to win, and so those characteristics were, first of all, multi-year experience. We really wanted to have someone that had a championship pedigree, and that can be challenging to find everything all in one, but that was really the foundation of our search. And what had happened in this year's search is Rick became available. We were planning on a pretty big and wide search, but Rick and I had a couple conversations. There was definitely mutual interest from the very beginning, and quite frankly, once Rick was interested in us and us interested in him, things moved very quickly. And the big reason why I think it probably moved as quickly as it did is because you look out into the marketplace, there's a lot of coaching openings. And from the very beginning, the conversations that Rick and I had, the conversations of people around here who have worked with Rick couldn't have been more positive. And once in this business, whether it's a draft pick, whether you're doing a trade, whether you're signing a player, sometimes it just gets to a point where you just know, and it feels right. And so we were able to pull the trigger. Rick is here, and it's something that this organization is super excited. There's been a long history together. From afar, we've seen Rick blossom into this amazing coach, winning championships, getting into the playoffs. And so it's something we feel very good about. And it's something that this organization is very excited about. So Rick, do you want to make your statement?
Yeah, well, can everyone hear me okay? Raise your hand if you can hear me. Yes, okay. Thanks for having me. I want to thank Herb, Simon, Kevin, Chad Buchanan, and the Pacers organization for having me back a third time. This has been a very special place for me and my family. When I came here as an assistant coach in 1997, I took on more responsibility than I had ever had, working for my good friend and former teammate, Larry Bird. I went through an amazing 3-year experience there. It led me to a sabbatical year following, which was great for me, as I was able to get a broader view of the game and do some television work. And then I was able to get the Detroit job for a couple of years. And then I was back in India a second time, working for Larry and Donnie. And we had a couple of fantastic years there, and that experience was wide-ranging. We went from a team that really was a true contender the first couple of years, and it got a little tougher the last couple of years. But a lot was learned. I took those things with me to another year of broadcasting and another sort of wide-ranging view of the game, and then was fortunate to have an amazing opportunity in Dallas. And 13 years in Dallas, a lot of different types of teams, the opportunity to work with Dirk Nowitzki for 11 of those years, Luka Doncic for 3 of those years. And again, as I have gone through my coaching experience journey, however you want to characterize it, the thing that I've learned about myself and my approach to NBA coaching is that whatever players are presented to me, by my management or my ownership, or however those things go. I really take a great deal of pride and love the challenge of taking that group and molding that group into the right kind of system. And so we've had a lot of different teams, particularly since our championship run, and I've learned an awful lot about adjusting, about trying to be on the inventive side, the coaching curve. The challenges are always great. And as I look at this roster and this opportunity, I see a group of guys that to me are at the right age. They've gone through some pretty wide-ranging experiences over the last 2 or 3 years. Health is going to play a big part in this team's success. And so, Josh Corbeil, who I worked with before, who I consider to be one of the very best in this business, is going to be a key part of this. Along with Carl and Tim, who's the new guy who I have not met yet, but we've got to get this team as healthy as possible. I've been able to have conversations with all the guys on the roster. Some of them I've had multiple conversations with. I like the way they're talking. I like the tone. We're going to make a heavy emphasis on getting better defensively and finding ways to create as many small edges as we can. We need to get back in the playoffs, and we need to find a way to win in the playoffs. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that that's what the mandate is. And I see this team a little bit similar to the team I took over in Detroit in 2001. A young veteran team that has some toughness, has some experience, and to me, they are getting to a point where they're seeing the meaningful aspects of coming together and making sacrifices and doing things together to try to win. And so a lot of that plan will be how I lay things out to them with my staff. But again, I'm really so fortunate, so excited to be back in the great state of Indiana, where basketball is king, and I look forward to the challenge.
All right, everyone, we're going to open up for questions now. As we call on you, if you could identify who you're with, so we can help Rick kind of get to know everybody as he settles back in. We'll start with Greg Doyle.
Rick, hi, Greg Doyle from the Indy Star. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
All right, good. 2 questions. Small one, where are you? Literally, where are you? And then the bigger question is, there's a lot of openings out there, and you would have been a prospect for a lot of them. Why did you want this one so fast?
Where am I right now? Physically? Yeah, we for the last 20 years, we've had a place in South Carolina that we come down to in the summertime and come to during All-Star break. So I'm in my office in our home in South Carolina. And so as you see behind me, there's a bunch of stuff hanging on the walls. I won't get into all that, but that's where I am right now. My plan is I'm going up to Northern New York State tomorrow to see my folks for 3 days. I'll be coming into Indy on the 5th of July to, meet with Kevin and Chad, sign my contract, talk some more about staff. We've got some important draft workouts, and we'll kind of go from there. This job interested me the most because of the strong level of interest from Herb, Kevin, and Chad. I really like the roster. I mean, this is my kind of team, as I look at the roster, and as I've talked to all these guys, I really have an even greater feeling that it's the kind of group of guys that I will have a blast working with. And so, strong mutual interest, and things came together pretty quickly.
I drove through the night last night to get home. I was with my mom in South Carolina to Columbia. You're not in Columbia. There's no way an NBA coach has a summer home in Columbia. It's the hottest place on earth.
Not Columbia, but somewhere further south toward the coast. But
good thinking.
Yeah, but yeah, that's quite a coincidence.
All right,
Thanks.
Charlie Clifford.
Hey, Rick, Charlie from Channel 8. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Question for you with this team. as you look at the roster, you know, when you're here previously, you had Reggie, you had Jermaine, you had a player that said, this is my team and we're going to go how I go. How important is it to find that organically, and how do you go about that here this summer?
Yeah, I think, again, you know, Sabonis has been was an all-star this year. I think he's the guy that people look at as sort of the main guy, but you know, I really feel like this is a team, when you're talking about the best players, it's a strength in numbers type of situation. And I think that, you know, there has to be a certain kind of balance. As I mentioned, when we were developing that team in Detroit for a couple of years, you know, the second year we had Billups, Hamilton, you know, Ben Wallace, we had Corliss Williamson, we had, you know, Tayshaun Prince was a young player who was starting to play more. And, you know, that group went on to make a couple of moves. They eventually traded for Rasheed Wallace, which got them over the top, and they were able to win a championship with that kind of strength in numbers core group of high level players. You look at, you know, I look at Malcolm Brogdon, I look at Karis LeVert. You know, TJ Warren didn't even play last year. I think he played 3 games last year. Miles Turner is the best rim protector in the game, you know, statistically. And, you know, Domas is, you know, a guy that's established that he can play the game at different levels. He can score at the rim. He drives it. You know, his 3-point shooting is something that's become a positive factor. And he gets to the free throw line and he can pass it, you know. And so, and I love McConnell as a player. I think he just brings a certain tenacity and a certain energy to the game, you know, Lamb, McDermott, all these guys. And so I just, you know, I feel like, yes, you know, identifying who the guys are and where the ball's going to go in crunch time is important. Role identification is huge. Role acceptance is bigger, you know, and we've got to do a great job of communicating as a coaching staff, you know, exactly what we need. And exactly, you know, what it's going to take for us to be successful. You know, my goal with this group is to have a situation and develop a feeling in the locker room and a feeling on the floor where we take great joy in helping each other get great shots on the offensive end, and we take great joy in helping each other defensively, trying to do well there. So, you know, that's how I see it. The roster is exciting. The guys here are all under good contracts. You know, from what I hear from Kevin and Chad, there's great interest in all of our guys. But I think right now, the priority is to, you know, get the new staff in here, work toward, you know, good health as much as we can. You know, try to get McConnell and McDermott re-signed if we can do that, and kind of move forward from there.
John Krasinski.
Hey, Rick, John Krasinski with The Athletic. Just wanted to kind of go down memory lane a little bit with you. And 2 things, like what stood out to you when you think back to coaching the Pacers the first time around that you were here, just those teams that you had and the talent that you worked with. And I was wondering too, you know, being, you know, this your 3rd time through here and you saying you wanted to be flexible and coaching that kind of the players that are provided to you. Is there something that you learned in those first 2 trips about anything unique to the fabric of Pacer basketball, of Indiana basketball, that you guys can maybe try to lean on to try and get this team back to a consistent contender?
Yeah, those are great questions. Johnny, you're in Minnesota now, right?
I am, yes. Can you tell the accent?
A little bit, eh? Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, it was so fortunate, you know, that my first 2 times here, you know, as an assistant working with Larry, it was Mark Jackson, Reggie Miller, it was Smits and the Davis brothers. Jalen Rose developed into a great scorer and a max player. Travis Best, those guys. We got to the conference finals. I think all 3 years and made the finals 1 year. The experience of a team going to a team at that time that a lot of people thought needed to be broken up. Larry Brown had done a great job, but he was leaving. People thought that the roster with Reggie and the Davises and Rick and those guys, it kind of, Derek McKee had just kind of run its course. And then Larry Bird came in, and he just gave that team new life and new confidence. And he did it in a way that was very simple. He talked about the things that were necessary for team success. We made the trade for Chris Mullen that year, which was which added another element that we needed. And it went from a team that people had written off to a team that was now, contending for the Eastern Conference championship, and took Jordan's last team in Chicago to Game 7. And so we got to do the same things here. We've got to lay this out in a way that makes sense to these guys. We got to sell them. I've got to sell them on making sacrifices and having each other's back, and doing the hard things. Just the basic things. Transition defense. Running back every time. It's the beginning of your defense. Little things like free throw block, all that stuff. We'll get into all that stuff. But that's what I learned with that group. And then, when I came back and we had Jermaine and Ron Artest, and Reggie was still there. We had Steve Jackson. We had a very talented team. We had a good run the first year. The second year, we had the situation in Detroit with the Palace. And even though we went through that difficult situation, we came out of that year with 44 wins, and we won in the first round and got to the second round. And so a lot of positives came out of it. And one thing I've learned in coaching is that you always have a plan for adversity. And when things get tough, you focus on what you have and not what you don't have. You always talk about having that mental edge, to create small edges and make sure you can do those things when things are tough. And, all those things that I've learned really helped me and helped our teams in Dallas. And, I feel very strongly that they'll help us here as well.
Daryl Wells.
Hey, how you doing, Coach? Daryl Wells, That's Opinion Media. Congrats on the job.
Thank you.
All right, I have a question for you. You mentioned so much about how the roster is well maintained with a lot of good pieces. In particular, the Miles Turner and Sabonis situation. A lot of people look at that as trying to figure it out. For you, how is it a luxury to have two skilled bigs in the NBA that typically doesn't have that type of talent with two guys on the roster?
Yeah. I look at those two guys, and, I think there's ways that we can stagger them in the lineup with the rotation, so that they can play together some, but that they can also, one play without the other. And I think there are some ways we can work to enhance, their individual games and help them mesh with other guys on the floor. I've talked to both guys about that. They both like playing together, and, they were both very open to, doing some of these different kinds of things and talking about them and putting them in play. Miles is an elite rim protector. That's such an important part of the game if you're going to, try to be a better team defensively. And as I mentioned earlier, Domas can just do so many things. And I think both of those guys shoot the three with a level of efficiency. I just, both of them being 25 years old, I think there's things we can do to help them get better, at the 3-point line and beyond, because the spacing in the game now isn't just at the 3-point line. As you're seeing, guys are spotting up and taking shots 2, 3, 4 feet behind the line to create wider gaps and make it harder to defend. So the short answer is I really like both guys. When my teams have played them over the last few years, we always felt like it was a physical beating that we were taking with them, both defensively and offensively. Because Domas is the guy that punishes you physically, when you're trying to guard him, on the inside, and when you're trying to guard him off the dribble and things like that. So I'm looking forward, to the challenge of making it work at the highest possible level with those two guys.
Wheat Hotchkiss.
Hi, Rick. Pacers.com. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You kind of touched on how the league has evolved so much over the last several years. I was wondering how you would say you've grown and evolved as a coach since your last tenure here in Indiana.
Yeah, there's so much that you learn really on a year-to-year basis. And because of the, such a strong presence of social media, it's the other aspect of our sport that's really, it's taken on a new life. And so there's sort of an ever-present aspect of it that is, that really permeates the game and really very, very positively in most cases. But it does create pressures on players, pressures to create highlights, pressures to post this, post that, all that kind of stuff. One of the things that intrigues me about this team is that it doesn't appear that we have a lot of guys that are really fixated on it, and that could be a positive thing for us. But social media has become very important for individual teams. When I was in Dallas, we went to the bubble last year. We allowed our social media guy to come into every practice and to give access to our fans because they had waited so many months for the hiatus. And so, we'll figure out what the right dose of that is. But that's another way that the game has changed so much. The style of play, is ever evolving. And now, as I just mentioned, the big difference now is the 5 men, are not only rollers and rim threats on lobs and stuff. These guys are now making, 27, 28, 29, 30-foot shots and driving the ball. And so we want to get our guys as versed as possible in doing those things offensively. But then you've got to work at how you're going to defend that stuff. And so it's really made defense such a challenging thing. But even though the scores are higher, the pace is faster, more shots are going in, the better defensive teams are still going to have an advantage. And so that's one reason that we're really going to work hard at the defensive end to, figure out what our best base coverage is, have a great transition defense, and be a good defensive rebounding team.
Jeremiah.
Hey, Rick, Jeremiah Johnson with Pacers TV. It's so rare when a coach leaves or parts ways with an organization that he appears at the press conference. And I remember yours after you left as head coach, and it really felt like you were refreshed and almost energized at the time you were ready for a change. Are you energized in somewhat the same way now to have a change and also to come back home, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Dallas was one of the great blessings in my career. I mean, I think Dallas and Indiana obviously are the two most impactful places that I've been as a coach, because as I mentioned, that my development as a coach has been so greatly shaped in Indiana. And then, a 13-year run with Dallas with a lot of different types of rosters has been a real fertile environment, to try to continue to develop coaching chops, so, but look, anytime you have the opportunity to leave one great franchise and join another, or I should say rejoin another. It's very, very special. And, you know, I've had a lot of conversations with Kevin and Chad, you know, over the last several days, and, you know, a few obviously leading up to, you know, the deal being agreed upon. And, you know, we're excited. There's just a lot of positive things about this situation. And again, I'll say this again, I think health and understanding our health situation and nurturing, you know, our players through their health situations is going to be super key to this thing.
Tony East.
Hey, Rick, Tony East, Forbes Sports and the West Side Community News. In Dallas, there was a time when much was made about your thoughts on post-ups versus spreading out the game and points per possession and things like that. Can you kind of detail how much analytics play into your way of thinking as a coach and how much that will impact the way you coach this Pacers team?
Yeah, sure. You know, the conventional post-up, you know, the 90s post-up of throwing it in, spotting up, backing in, grinding, you know, that play has become a difficult play in our league. There are a few players that are good at it. There are some guards that are very good at it. Luka Doncic is a really effective post player because of his strength and his skill set. You've got Anthony Davis, you've got LeBron, you know, you've got a few others. You know, Domas is a guy that's effective in the paint. I think there's ways that we can get Miles to be more impactful in the paint, you know, with making him a rim threat on lobs, you know, ducking him in, doing those kinds of things. But there's a real balance these days between the post game and the spacing game. And with this group, we're going to really have to work to strike the correct balance. You know, and I think Domas is one of the guys in this league that is an effective post player. And so we want to make sure we take advantage of that.
Kevin Brockway.
Yeah, Coach, congratulations. I'm just curious about, you know, the coach front office dynamic is so important in sports. And I'm just curious about, obviously, your conversations with Kevin and Chad that you've alluded to. How aligned do you guys feel like going forward, and how much are you anticipating kind of that working relationship to be like?
Well, I've loved the interactions that I've had with Kevin and Chad so far. It feels like we all see the game in a very similar way. You know, each team's different with how the front office and the management team interacts with the head coach. You know, in Dallas, you know, it was wide ranging. At times I would be very involved in deals. Other times deals would be made, you know, sometimes they were cap related or something like that. And I always just trusted that Mark and Donnie were doing the right things. And I take whatever they gave me and do the best that I could with it. You know, here, I think, you know, they're very interested in knowing my views of the game and my views of the roster and so on and so forth. And I've really enjoyed the conversations. They've been very detailed. These guys are extremely organized. They've got it covered, both from a personnel side and an analytics side, which you have to have in this day and age. So, you know, I'm just really looking forward to the relationship. You know, but I view myself as a coach. You know, I do not, you know, have any designs or any interest on being a front office person at this stage of my career. But I want to work effectively with these guys and work effectively with Herb, you know, so that we can make, you know, the correct decisions as we move forward.
Dana Benbow.
Hey, this is Dana Bembo with the Indianapolis Star. Welcome back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just can't see you, but anyway, that's okay.
Oh yeah, I didn't put my video on. Yeah, I wanted to get from your own mouth kind of how do you describe your leadership or coaching style when it comes to relationships with players?
Yeah, I think it's the most important aspect of our job. As I've spoken to all the players here, I'm doing a lot of listening. It's important for me to understand how these guys see the game. And the relationships that you build, are really the greatest source of fulfillment in coaching. And so I'm really looking forward to getting with these guys in person. I've done some FaceTime stuff with a couple of the guys as they've done workouts because I just can't be on site at the present time. But I really feel like you come to a new situation, you've got to listen, you've got to learn, you've got to talk about things you believe are important. But there's got to be a give and take, and relationships develop over time. Respect is earned in drops, and trust is earned in drops. And in coaching, you learn that early on.
Scott Agnes.
Hey, Rick, Scott Agnes, Fieldhouse Files. I actually want to go back to Kevin. And Kevin, in terms of you guys are making such a significant commitment to Rick. What did it take for Herb to get there, to get him on board? And also, what conversation did you have with Rick about filling out his coaching staff and what is needed there?
Well, we're still working on the coaching staff, but one of the advantage that Rick has is, he's the head of the coaching association, so he's in dialogue with all these coaches all the time, and so we're working through who those are going to be. I think we're getting close on a couple. I think those announcements will be forthcoming, but I think I said at the end of the season, the head coach is the most critical piece, but anymore, having a great staff is super important, not just on the basketball side, not just on the management side, but also on the coaching side. And so Rick's interviewing, I'm talking to him, we're bouncing ideas back and forth, and we're hopeful to have a staff here shortly. What was the other question, Scott?
In terms of getting Herb Simon to get this level of commitment to be able to afford a guy like Rick?
Well, I would say this, that, you look at our timeline, you look at the team that we have, this isn't a team that, you want to, tank and go start getting picks. We want to win. I think it sends a very strong message, not just to the community, or it sends a message to our players that we're in this, and we want to get back to getting to the playoffs and making some noise in the playoffs, and that we want to get back there. And Herb was all on board with this. He'd had a prior relationship with Rick, and he was all for this from the very beginning, and as were other people around here, as I'm sure you can imagine, that Rick was the person that we drew up and said, this is our guy. And it became apparent very quickly with our conversations. So ownership all on board, ready to fill out the rest of the staff and really start plugging into what is our team going to look like for the next year. And I think Rick has said, Rick has a strong voice in how this team's going to be constructed. But I think we all understand that we're very collaborative. He's very collaborative. He has opinions on players. I have opinions on players, and we have a mantra that's, we agree, we disagree, and we kind of like that healthy debate of whether, that player is right for us, and we like strong opinions. But as soon as we make the decision on who we're going to sign or trade or draft, we unite completely, and that's very important. And we've already seen that already in our early discussions about players.
Chris Hagan.
No offense to Kevin, but can we go back to Rick?
Absolutely.
Hey, Coach Chris Hagan, Fox 59. Since you've left, you and I have a lot less hair, but a lot more experience, which I think is good. You've addressed health a couple of occasions. I know injuries are part of the game, but the franchise has really taken some licks in the last few years. How can you be proactive? Is there a way to be proactive? Is there a way to confront these things, or is it, like they say, just part of the game?
Well, I gotta be careful because I'm a coach, not a trainer or a PT or a doctor. But in Dallas over my last 13 years there, one of the really important things that we did on a day-to-day basis that I did was talk to my trainer, Casey Smith. And we talked about, how we were going to manage minutes and how we're going to play guys, what guys could tolerate. He had a real good feel for the big picture and an intimate knowledge of each player's individual health situation. And so, sometimes it comes down to, the amount of how long a stretches guys play. If a guy has a significant injury history and you play him the first 12 minutes of each game, that's tough. A guy, you really burn a guy out. And as a player gets more fatigued, injury becomes more probable. And so, there are certain things about managing the rotation, that you can do to help guys stay fresh over the course of the season. One of the things we did with Dirk Nowitzki, going into the year we won the championship, we started playing him in 3 stretches per half. And so he would start, play 6 minutes, come out for probably 3, go back in with the second unit. And you get a guy like that goes in with a second unit for 6 or 7 minutes. That really strengthens the guys around him, comes out for 3 minutes, and then goes back in for the last 4, whatever the numbers add up. Well, in that scenario, playing those 6 or 7 minute stretches, he never gets fully gassed. And you allow, an all-time great player to enhance the guys around him. In that particular season, it really helped keep his energy level up. And then we got into a long playoff run and we continued with it. So that's an example of how you can help manage these kinds of situations. I know Josh Corbeil is, at the cutting edge of everything having to do with player health and physical therapy and those kinds of things. And so we've had some discussions. We'll have more as we kind of move forward. And once we get closer to the season and, start looking at exhibition games and regular season games, this is one of the sciences of coaching now. It's a little bit like, the world of television access. One of the job descriptions of being a coach in the NBA now is, you've got to be ready to be in front of the camera. You got to be ready to have your pregame and halftime talks to the team, filmed and be on TV. And then your huddles, when you're on national TV games, you're going to be on TV. It wasn't like this 10, 12 years ago when or 19 years ago when I got into this. And so things are evolving. But when you talk about health, that's the best example that I can give you that had to do with a franchise caliber player.
Chris Denary.
Hey, Rick, Chris Denary, Pacers TV. Great to have you back on board. Kevin talked about you guys are going to be putting your staff together, and we'll have some names here relatively soon. What are you looking for individually, or the traits that you want in your assistant coaches?
Great communicators, great energy, great staff chemistry, and people that have a natural way of communicating the message. Not only the message of the coaching staff, but the message of the franchise. Who are we? I think the identity of a team is a super important thing to establish. And it starts with the head coach and starts with the president. As you identify, who you want to be as a franchise, and then the coaching staff, and then you want to get to a point where the players, are sending that message out as well. So, that's how I view that.
Charlie Clifford.
Rick, in terms of your family moving back to Indiana, what's it been like knowing that you're back in this community? What does it mean to everyone behind the scenes?
Well, they're excited about Indiana. They're excited about the opportunity. When I was here the second time, our daughter Abby was born, and she was born on May 7th, 2004, in between game 1 and game 2 of the Miami series. The people that held her in their arms and when she was 1, 2, 3 years old aren't going to believe how she's grown up. She's 17 years old and she's been driving for a year now. So when you talk about family, Indiana's been a really big part of our journey as a family.
Gary Washburn.
Hey Rick, Gary Walsh from the Boston Globe. Usually coaches after long stints might take a year off, decide to do a little TV, take a break. Was there any contemplation of just taking a year off? And secondly, as president of the Coaches Association, when it seems like Kevin has an eye on you, you have an eye on that job, there isn't really a long interview process with other candidates. Is that something that needs to be explained, or is that okay if a team and a coach kind of eye each other and go, we want this connection?
Okay, so the first question was whether
contemplate taking a year off.
Yeah, well, I'd done that a couple of times, and it was, I always had good experiences when I did it, but when an opportunity like this comes up, you listen, and then as we both have mentioned, the mutual interest was strong, and things developed from there. In terms of the hiring process, as the president of the Coaches Association, I work with David Fogel, who's the executive director. We're always talking to the league. We're talking to Orr Stewart, who now is the director of HR, about a diverse hiring process. It's something that we've gone on record to talk about, and every situation is different. One thing that we always acknowledge is a team can hire who they want to. That's their prerogative. But if you're asking me, in general, yeah, we always are in favor of a wide-ranging and diverse hiring process.
Bob Kravitz.
Yeah, hi Rick. Bob Kravitz with The Athletic. After you won the title in Dallas, Donnie was telling me that you sent replica rings to him, Herbie and Larry, and maybe some other people. Why did you feel that that was something that you wanted to do?
Well, I didn't send one to Larry. Larry has enough rings. But there's some very special people that had just an amazing impact on my career, my life, and I just wanted to pay homage to it. Donnie Walsh in particular was a very special person to me. He was a guy that helped guide me from being an assistant coach that was gaining a lot of responsibility when I came in with Larry to my quest to become a head coach. He was a guy that always took extra time to talk to me about things that I needed to do better, that I needed to develop better. I consider Donnie Walsh one of the very, very special people that I've ever been around in this business, because of how much he loves the game, how much he cares for the people that have worked under him, and how much he did to help create opportunities for me to succeed. There was one time when I first got here as an assistant, we sat in his office, and I was the offensive guy, and we'd had a couple of tough situations at the end of games, and we talked about end of game situations, and he gave me some really good ideas of things, and I got better. But I don't know, when you go through that experience and you get to the mountaintop and you win an NBA championship, it's a huge thing. It's humbling and it's daunting, on a lot of levels. And so one thing that I instantly hearkened back to were the people that helped me the most, and I just wanted to pay tribute to them.
Thanks, Rick.
Scott Agnes.
Hey, Rick, is there a feeling that coming back here to Indianapolis, there's some unfinished business considering circumstances out of your control the last time around?
Well, that's an interesting question. Unless you've won a championship, I think there's always unfinished business. And look, we're a small market team. We're a humble organization. I say we because now I'm a part of this organization again. But we've got to think big, and we've got to be proactive. We've got to be very smart in everything that we do. Creating small edges is something that you don't just do on the court. You find ways to do it, in the front office, and in the community. Our activity in the community is very important as well. And, I'll get with, the people that deal with those kinds of things and kind of see what's what in Indy these days. But there's always things to be done. This past year, I learned an amazing amount, about social justice. I got involved in Dallas in some things having to do with policing policies and things like that. I'm going to look into those things in Indianapolis and see if there's things that I can get involved with that might help. But there's a lot going on with an NBA franchise, and the head coach has to be a leader. The guy in Kevin's position has to be a leader. And when you lead, effective leadership means that when things are going well, the attention focuses on the players. They're the ones that are on the floor. They're the ones that are getting the job done. And when you hit tough times, that's when the head coach has to step up and make sure that you give the right direction, you protect the players. And again, when you hit adversity, you've got to focus on the things that you have and not the things that you don't have. I've been through a lot of those situations. You never look forward to them necessarily, but there's always a seed of opportunity there, and we'll always look to find that opportunity.
John Krasinski.
Hey, Kevin, question for you. Even if Rick's resume was only his Dallas time, he would have been an attractive head coaching option for you. Does his history of success in Indiana with the Pacers, the ties to this area, does that separate things? How much did that factor into his candidacy when you looked at your available options?
I believe it was a huge factor, and quite frankly, his working relationships. And at the end of the day, what you find out in this business is it's all about relationships. And Rick did a great job while I was here. He's got deep relationships, marrow deep to people in this organization, and that those relationships mean a lot to us. And quite frankly, it's interesting. I told Rick this sort of when we were going through the courting process, and that is, my relationship with Larry Bird, my relationship with Donnie is very similar. That the same relationships that Rick has with them, in that they're mentors, and both those guys are supreme leaders, and they're great mentors in terms of how they wanted the game to be played. And so it was interesting because when I heard Rick speak and talk about the team and talk about his philosophies, it's almost as I was hearing Larry and Donnie and things that I'd heard them over the last 13 or 12 years that I've been here. So I think there's a connection part that Rick and I had very quickly because of that. And to me, that was super important in making this decision.
Chris Hagan.
I got one more for Rick. I know starting next week when you get here, all of you the present and moving forward, but since you are kind of going down memory lane a little bit, I spoke with Steven Jackson not long ago, and he said not a week goes by where he doesn't think about that era and how you guys should have won, not one, but multiple NBA championships. Now that you've been there and know what it's like to get to the mountaintop, do you ever look back on that team and feel like, man, we had all the pieces in place and that should have been a championship team?
Yeah, it's that memory is bittersweet for sure. It's something that it's a source of emotion really, because of everything that happened that year. And as I mentioned before, the fact that after getting a lot of guys suspended, Ronnie was suspended for the entire season. Steve was out for 30 games. Jermaine was suspended, I think 25, but then they shortened it to 15. And then there may have been one other one. The way that group stuck together and found a way to turn, and Reggie was hurt at the beginning of the season too, and found a way to turn it into a positive was one of the great examples of resourcefulness, team resourcefulness that I've ever seen in sport and that I've ever been involved with. But I think we all learned something, that year about how delicate, expectations are, how tenuous things can be. The raw power of emotions and how when they go the wrong way, it can change history. And so I take all of that, I take great stock in it. It's helped teach me a lot of things about myself and about what team is and the values that I believe are important to team building and to an organization. And look, you don't experience growth without really incredible challenges. And so I've had my share of growth over the years, and I hope to use that wisdom, to help create the best possible situation again here in Indiana.
Tony East.
Rick, I wanted to actually go back to your time in Portland because your last 2 seasons as an assistant there, Turner-Sabonis was on your roster. How does it feel for you to be coaching a father and a son through the course of your career? And what similarities do you see in Domas's game and his father's?
Oh, wow. This question makes me smile. When Arvydas came to Portland, it was in, I think, the fall of 95. So 96 was when Domas was born. And I remember it vividly. We had a practice. It was in between games 3 and games 4 of the playoff series. We were playing against Utah at the time. And I went over to Arvydas's house, he had missed practice because of the birth. And I had gone over to congratulate him. And Arvydas had always been a guy who was very, very reserved, very, didn't say a whole lot, but he was so emotionally happy that day. He gave me a big bear hug. We had a few drinks, And then he even showed me a video of the birth, which may have been a little bit too much information at the time. But I've always felt a connection with Domas because of that experience. And it's amazing how time flies. I did get a chance to talk to Domas 2 or 3 days ago. He was just entering the bubble over there in Lithuania for the Olympic pre-qualifying. And I can tell by the tone of his voice that he's a young player that's driven, that basketball and basketball success is something that's in his blood, and that he's really into winning. And we talked about, the price of winning and the sacrifices that need to be made. And he, along with Malcolm and Karis and TJ and Miles and the other TJ, both TJs, and Doug and Jeremy and all those guys, they're sounding, they're kind of the same way, and they're saying a lot of the same things. And the tone is the tone you want to hear. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be an amazing challenge. I'm humbled for this opportunity again. I'm very thankful once again to Herb and Kevin and Chad. I did have a brief conversation with Larry, about a week and a half ago, when I left, I think it was the day after I left Dallas, but he really was not involved in this process. It was really, me, Kevin, and Chad. And so I look forward to, reacquainting with everyone here on this Zoom. It's been too long. I've learned a lot, over the last 13 years, and I look forward to rekindling these relationships and making them fruitful for everyone.
All right, everyone. Rick pretty much summed up best. Thank you all for your time today. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Rick. And we'll hopefully see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.